started hiking, then I got into mountaineering, then I got into ice climbing, and then eventually into rock climbing. Um, it's a kind of an unnatural progression nowadays because everybody starts in a rock gym, and this is way before rock gyms. Started climbing in 1982 at a little tiny crag in South Kingstown, Rhode Island called Petaquamsket Rock, and climbed there with a bunch of locals, and we shared a rope. We shared rock shoes, which were pretty ancient Boreal Furries that were basically Converse sneakers with climbing rubber on them.
What is it about climbing that keeps you interested in it?
Um, it's a mental game. It's hard to explain. It's just something you want to do because I don't know if you need the adrenaline rush or um, it's a, it's a problem solving, uh, which is just fascinates me.
Well, that's great. And what types of climbing do you do or have you done?
I've tried pretty much all types of climbing. I originally was pretty much just a trad climber. Um,
Can you explain what trad climbing is?
Traditional climbing is, you start from the ground up, placing gear, clipping to the gear as your follower, your second comes up. They take the gear out, and you just keep doing that for multiple pitches. Um, Sport climbing, on the other hand, has pre-drilled bolts and hangers in the rock that you clip on the way up. They generally are single pitch climbs, like one rope length. Um, I've been doing more and more sport climbing lately because in my advancing years, it's safer. The approaches are usually a lot shorter and don't have to carry as much gear. So I've been doing a lot more of that lately. I've done bouldering, although I think it's silly. I've done aid climbing, although it's way too much work and it's too slow. So I'd call myself a trad slash sport climber.
Nice. And which type of climbing is your favorite? Is sport climbing your favorite?
Um, I still like trad climbing, probably the most. But like I said, I've been doing more and more sport climbing. So as long as I'm outside climbing, I love it all.
Yeah, I hear that. And where have you traveled to go climbing?
I've climbed at pretty much all of the major climbing destinations in the United States. I mean, there's a few that I haven't hit, but I've hit all the big ones. Um, I've traveled to Mexico, Canada, Switzerland, Spain. Before COVID, the last 3 years before that, I was going over to Spain for 2 weeks every February, and love it over there. You can climb in a t-shirt in February, and that's all sport climbing on limestone, and there's 10 pitch sport routes there.
Why don't you tell us about one of your favorite climbing adventures?
Um, Probably, well, at least my most dangerous climbing adventure was my friend and I went over to Switzerland to climb the Eiger, and every alpinist, you know, has that on their tick list. And we went over to do a route called the North Pillar, and they call the Austrian route because it was put up by uh, Reinhold and Gunther Messner, who were pretty famous climbers. And the problem was global warming. We went over there in the end of July, and we when we got there, it was pretty wet. We let it dry a few days, got a weather window, went up, climbed all day, climbed up 14, 15 pitches, about halfway up. Well, not quite halfway. And we bivvied there for the night. The next morning we got up, it was all verglass, which is, as you know, a thin coating of ice. And the sun came out, that melted, the rock was wet. The snowfields that were above us were melting, so we were getting waterfalls over the route. So we said, we got to get out of here. So there's no fixed anchors on the Eiger, so we had to leave gear. I had to do 14 rappels to get down, leaving gear all the way down, which really hurt because I had to replenish my rack in Switzerland, which is not the most inexpensive country in Europe by any means. But about a week later, we got another good window of weather. We summited via the Medelegi route. Spectacular route on a knife edge arête with 4,000 and 5,000 foot drops on either side. So that was probably my favorite adventure for sure.
What is the most dangerous situation you were ever in? Is that the one you just described?
Absolutely. The Eiger is notorious for rockfall, and it's this really, choicy limestone, so that you've got these missiles of rock flying by you all over the climb, and I'm kicking off rocks to my belayer is crouched in a corner with we obviously have helmets on. It's a very dangerous climb. In climbing, there's different types of danger. One is called objective danger. Objective danger means it's something you have no control over. Falling rock is an objective danger. Avalanches, objective danger. You don't really have any control. You can't control that other than staying home on the couch.
Maybe the couch sounds pretty good. Why do you risk your life climbing?
I like to think that I don't risk my life climbing. I like to think that I mitigate those risks by placing good gear. I risk broken ankle, maybe a broken leg climbing. I like to think I don't risk my life climbing, and I don't do as crazy or run out climbs now that I used to do.
Well, that's good news. How has your family handled your passion for climbing?
Well, I'm divorced from a non-climber, so I guess that pretty much explains it. My current partner, she's a climber.
Well, it does explain it. And when you were climbing and had a career and a home life, was it hard to juggle all of those things?
No, because actually my career, I travel a lot for work, and I travel to California, Utah, various places that have good climbing. So I would extend my work travel to go climbing. And for example, I'd go to San Diego frequently. If it was summer, I would go climb up at Taquitos. If it was winter, I'd climb at Joshua Tree. I'd go to Monterey a lot, climbed at the Pinnacles. I've got a lot of climbing in through work. And with family life, I climb with my son extensively. I mean, he went up Whitehorse, 8-pitch climb when he was 9 years old. When he was 11 years old, we did the East Face of Longs Peak, Keener's route in Colorado. He's climbed at Red Rocks with me. My daughter has climbed at the Gunks with me, New Hampshire with me. She ice climbs with me. We're ice climbing again this winter. So I can include my kids in the climbing.
That's really special. What lessons has climbing taught you that have helped you in your life?
I don't know if it's taught me any life lessons. It taught me wear a helmet.
That's good advice. What other advice do you have for the modern climber?
Wear a helmet. A lot of modern climbers now, a whole different progression. They're coming out of rock gyms.
How was climbing different when you first began than it is today?
Climbing was a lot different because there were no rock gyms. It was all trad climbing. Very few climbers. We were considered the lunatic fringe. Now everybody climbs in a rock gym, it seems. It's very common, very mainstream. Back then, again, it was all trad climbing, and you had a mentor, and the mentor would basically hand you a rack and you'd go up. And that was how you were introduced to climbing. Back then, the grades, I mean, if you climbed 5'8" at the Gunks, you were a pretty hot-ass climber. Now, you got 10-year-old kids in the rock gym climbing 5'12s. It's considerably different with rock gyms. Yeah, it's all to do with gyms.
If you could, what would you like to see change for the future of climbing?
Well, I'd like to see people a little more into outdoor ethics and conservation and not trashing the crags. One of the problems is with the popularity of climbing is that there's just overpopulating in places like Rumney. You go there on a weekend and there's erosion, there's too many people, there's trash. People are going from the gym to places like Rumney, and they're not really outdoors people. They're not conservationists.
What would you like your legacy to be in climbing?
I just like people to enjoy the routes that I've put up. I've put up a number of like moderate routes that people really enjoy, and it's not how hard of the route is. It's actually more moderate routes, particularly bolted moderate routes. People seem to really enjoy. I bolted an area in Beach Pond, Rhode Island that I climbed many years ago on trad, and it was a relatively obscure area. Put bolts there. Now there's people from all over the place. There's 15 people there sometimes on a weekend from as far away as Boston and New Haven. So I'm just glad people are enjoying those routes.
About how many routes have you put up in your life?
47 to be exact.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Nope, not that I can think of, but it's always enjoyable climbing with you.
Well, same here. It's an awesome experience. Thanks so much for sharing the day today.
Okay.